Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's eClaims webinar. We ask you to please keep your phone lines muted as we will be using the chat feature to receive your questions today. Please enter your questions throughout the presentation in the chat box located on the right side of your screen. Use the drop-down to send your questions to the panelists. You can also hover over the WebEx tab at the top of your screen and click on Chat. We will answer as many of your questions as we can, but if you have questions that we don't get to today or think of something after the session ends, we will be providing you with resources at the end of the presentation. Today we will be covering 3.1 news and our 3.1 changelog updates. We will also take questions at the end of the webinar. First, we'll review eClaims recent news since the October webinar. The September slide deck and recording are now available on the eClaims presentation page on the board's website. The agenda for the September webinar include eClaims recent news, eClaims topics, and a demonstration of the web data entry application for 3.1. Changes were made to the EDI 3.1 implementation guide, and the updated guide has been posted on the eClaims implementation guide page. These changes include a new revisions section on page 2 of the guide. The revisions section will be updated whenever changes are made. There was an update to the eClaims implementation plan and training, section 3.1. The due date for testing was changed from January 14th, 2022 to January 7th, 2022. An update to the test plan for flat filers, section 3.7 was made. Information regarding the availability for eClaims inquiry application test transactions to view accepted or rejected using transactions using the Froy-Schroy transaction search and error reports. This update is described on the inquiry overview page in the eClaims section on the board's website. An update to the test plan for flat filers was made in section 3.7 and the eClaims web data entry testing instructions, section 3.12, to remove references to reduced benefit amount code of Z net to 0. An update to the moving from test completion to production status, section 3.8, was made to state that test files can continue to be sent until January 7th, 2022. On November 9th through the 10th of this year, the IAIABC is hosting a virtual claims EDI release 3.1 training. In this training, you will learn some objectives that are designed to help you understand the enhancements and new features of 3.1 and successfully capture new and revised DNs and apply the data processing rules to them. This training will help you understand the enhanced O2 change reporting process and rules. You'll learn how to identify and initiate data sequencing rules associated with 3.1 and gain insight to post-publication changes in progress, and planned future enhancements. You will also learn about the IAIABC Claims Release 3.1 XML standard, understand how to receive and process new MTCs, code values, and processing rules, and it will help you understand how to create and send new MTCs, code values, and processing rules. You will find and register for this training opportunity on the IAIABC's website on the upcoming events page. And now I'm going to pass it over to Michael Hunter to review eClaims topics.
Thank you very much, Patty. We just wanted to give an onboarding reminder to everyone that we had sent the onboarding emails out to all of your administrators, as well as a reminder in advance of the October 12th start date for the FTP testing. So those were sent. If anyone has questions, do not feel that they got that email and should have, they can email the eClaims trading partner at wcb.ny.gov email. We also just wanted to let folks know that we did find a typo in the implementation guide regarding the zip and PDF format. So what we ended up doing with that was we still had the old format in there. So with that, what we did was we are going to be updating the implementation guide to correct that. The format has not changed for the PDF or zip files. It will remain the same as it is currently. So if you do see that in the implementation guide, that is a typo. So all FTP filers were sent that formal email. As Patty mentioned earlier, section 3.7 of the implementation guide was recently updated, and that is really your resource for where you want to go for all of the test plans and test information for the FTP filers. If you have an EDI vendor, they'll be testing on behalf of you as their client. So if you are an FTP filer and working through a vendor, we ask that you contact your vendor if you're interested in participating in the testing or if have any questions regarding the testing as well. As Patty mentioned earlier, test files will be discontinued on January 7th of 2022, and all trading partners will be put into production on January 24th, 2022, regardless of whether you pass those tests. Unlike in 3.0, where there was a staged implementation, we are cutting everyone over on the same date on January 24th, 2022. And it is important that you begin testing as soon as possible. If you have questions about testing, that you reach out to us as soon as possible. We're available to meet with trading partners if there are any questions. You will be held to the ongoing monitoring requirements that are listed in section 3.9 of the implementation guide. That goes over the 90% acceptance rate, and obviously as exists in 3.0, there's monitoring and other penalties that can be imposed as well. So it's important, again, that you begin testing as soon as possible. The sync up we just wanted to go over very briefly because we did happen to get a few questions about the sync up from folks starting their onboarding. So test C in the test plan includes a requirement that you submit the new Shroy SU sync up transaction. Before you send that, you do have to send an email to the eClaims trading partner mailbox with the claim administrator claim number and the jurisdiction claim number of the claim. The reason for that is we actually have to pre-approve your Shroy sync up. You are only able to send that if we have pre-approved that transaction. On the sequencing, you'll notice some notes that we have regarding the prior approval process. So edit 3 on that sequencing table checks to see what's been accepted from you already and applies the following edits. You'll notice down below, Shroy sync up will only be accepted upon request and approval of eClaims. So otherwise, you will actually get an invalid sequence error. Next slide. So if the request wasn't approved, again, we will reject that. The eClaims inquiry application, this will be available during the testing period for all users listed in your trading partner profile as eClaim inquiry users currently. The following reports will be available during onboarding: the FTP acceptance chart. So that's the one that will display your percentage for acceptance. and we'll also include your full number of transactions submitted, including rejected and accepted. Transaction errors by rejection reason. This report includes the rejections that were returned, listing an error type, as well as at least one of the beginning FROI nums or SHROI numbers, as well as the last FROI and SHROI number. So you'll get at least 2 examples of each of those rejection reasons. And transaction errors by claim administrator claim number. So that's actually sorted by your claim number to make it a little easier for you to locate those rejections. So this again is available now. The link for eClaims inquiry was included in the onboarding email sent to your administrators. So again, if there's any questions about that, you do not feel that the administrators got the email, you can always reach out to us and we can resend that email. We had a question earlier about eClaims web entry and what web entry testers had to do. So in section 3.12 of the implementation guide, anyone that's an existing release 3 web data entry trading partner, you've already been approved to submit through web data entry, and you do have the ability to use a test environment. That link was also sent to your eClaims administrators in that same onboarding email and included a link to both inquiry and eClaims web data entry. There is no formal testing requirement for any existing web data entry organizations. So if you're approved for 3.0 and submit exclusively through web entry, you do have access to the test environment so you can get familiar with it, but you do not have any formal test that you have to follow. You can look in the implementation guide. There is a web data entry test plan for new organizations, so you are welcome to follow that if you like. But at a minimum, we do encourage you to log into the web entry test environment, get familiar with what the new data elements look like, and prep yourself for January 24th, 2022. That's when we'll cut everyone over. You'll be able to still log in with your existing user ID and password, so there will be no new registration required for release 3.1. We also have had a few questions into our inbox about onboarding. So we just wanted to pass some of those around to other folks in case you had the same questions. One of those was if your organization submitted 20 transactions and only one of those was rejected, do you have to repeat the other 19 transactions from the test that accepted? You do not. The answer to that is no. You would only need to, and we would only expect you to repeat the one rejected transaction to successfully pass that test. The example we have on the screen here, if you have a SHROI RB that's rejected, but all other SHROIs are accepted, you would just need to resubmit that SHROI RP until it's accepted to pass that part of that test. If for some reason you do need to submit additional FROIs or SHROIs as part of that test as a baseline to get the other transaction accepted, that's perfectly acceptable as well. And the other question we had was about the production date in the email we had provided. In release 3.0, for those that originally tested with us, you know that we started fresh. We were not accepting EDI previously, so we had no transactions in our database at the time. For release 3.1, we actually made a copy of our production environment as of August 28th of this year. So any transaction or claim that is already submitted prior to or on August 28th of this year will already be in that test environment. The importance of that is if you're submitting a SHROI later on for a further test and you previously submitted a FROI on August 1st of this year, you'd be able to use that case towards your testing without having to resend a FROI to get to that SHROI for sequencing purposes. The other reason we're pointing that out is just keep in mind that it is a production snapshot. So if you did submit a FROI previously on that case and you tried to submit another of the same FROI, it's going to reject as a duplicate because it's already on file. We've seen that a couple times with testing. So we just wanted to remind folks of that. And with that, we're now going to turn it over to Kim and Sue, who are going to do another web data entry demo for folks.
And I will stop sharing.
All right. Thank you, Mike and Patty. So if you were with us last month, we demonstrated the FROI OO and the FROI O2. Today I am going to do the SHROI IP, the SHROI CB, and a suspension, just to show you some of the changes that you will be seeing in release 3.1. I will be leaving some things so that we get error messages so that you can see the error messages that you will receive should you make a mistake. So on the SHROI IP, one of the things you'll notice is the initial date employer had knowledge of date of disability. And the definition of this is the date the employer became aware of the initial or subsequent date of lost time for the claimant. So we are going to fill that in. I already entered the calculated wage and the calculated weekly compensation amount, just in the interest of time. You'll need to enter the first date of disability after the waiting period, initial date, last day worked, initial date disability began, initial return to work date, initial return to work type code, initial return to work physical restrictions, and initial return to work with same employer. We'll come down to our benefits. Oops. And this will be an event as it is our IP.
And Sue, I just want to point out that the reason you're entering all the initial return to work fields is because you're going to be entering reduced earnings to show them the new fields for the reduced earnings. So that's why you did enter in the initial return to work date, return to work same employer fields.
Great, thanks. There we go.
So this is the new reduced earnings segment in 3.1, where we're going to have the reduced earnings start date, reduced earnings week end date, your actual reduced earnings, and then the reduced earnings net weekly amount due by the claim administrator. So it's going to give us better reporting instead of the old RE. And Sue, can you just go back into the reduced earnings segment real quick?
Sure.
So the actual reduced earnings, if you click on the actual reduced earnings, you'll see the actual reduced earnings is the weekly wage of an employee who has returned to work with physical restrictions or reduced earnings. So that's the weekly wage that they're earning. And then down below, the reduced earnings net weekly amount due by the claim administrator is the amount that the claim administrator is paying.
Okay. And we are going to submit and hopefully get errors. I intentionally didn't change that just so that you would see the error that comes up when you this is medical only. So we're going to update that. Our non-consecutive period. If you hover and right-click, you will get your definition. We'll help you fill that out. And of course, this is erroring because we have the temporary total here and the temporary partial here.
If you actually use the pencil there, Sue, under the payment reasons and go in and you can show them the error real quick. So payment reason code must equal benefit type code or other benefit type code. So it's mismatched. So she'll have to go fix the benefit type code under benefit types to match the payment reason, so the 070.
I know. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Looks like it doesn't like something in that payment there.
And I think I forgot to change the
Go in and it'll highlight which one is. It's probably, yeah, because you're saying you're paying $4,200. The amount you paid was $500, so you can't be above what you paid there. And then before you hit submit, Sue, can you show them the overpayment amount that's new in 3.1? So that's right above the benefit.
Right here, yeah.
You're going to have the overpayment amount current. So the current shall be the most recent value reported on the next SROI due. If you have an overpayment, if you can scroll down a little bit. Once reported, the value should never return to null and instead be reported as 0. So we did want to point out that new overpayment amount for 3.1.
And hopefully we are good to go. And now we are going to continue on, hopefully, with the SROI CB. Now, for those of you who aren't used to the web data entry, everything does flow through from one transaction to the next. It's all cumulative. So we are going to change the benefit on here. Something new we have is a change of benefit reason code. The code that's reported at the claim level identifying the reason the benefit type code or the net weekly amount has changed. And there are 5 values: A for the IME, B, employee is treating physician, C, recalculation of the net weekly wage, D for jurisdiction directed, and E, stipulated or negotiated net weekly amount. So we are going to use D for our purposes today. And we are going to go ahead and change this to 050.
So you've got to add 2 benefits. You got to do it as an event for 2 benefits.
Total?
No, you're already using total, so you're going to have to do temporary partial. So as you can see, this is 100% acceptance. You're not going to be able to, we're not going to accept the transaction until all the errors are fixed. So this one was saved successfully. And quickly, Sue, you could just do a really quick suspension. You don't have to go through the whole process of submitting it. All I want you to do is show in the drop-down how it's Troy SX now and where the field is for the suspension reason code, which is different in 3.1.
All right. So as opposed to getting all our different suspensions, now you got this, the Troy SX full suspension.
So those of you that have used this before, you were used to having all the suspensions in the drop-down, the S1, the S4, the SJ, the SD. Now you're only going to see the Troy SX in 3.1. And then you're going to use the suspension reason code next to the suspension effective date and above the suspension reason narrative to give us the suspension reason code. And there's where your S1, S2, S4, S5, S7, so on and so forth.
SD and SJ.
Yep.
And you can fill out whatever in here.
And you're going to have to go make those an event.
Mm-hmm.
You can bring the payments to date if you need to, and we can submit.
Success. So
Okay, Patty, that's all we have
new...
for today, yeah. Turn it back over to them, Sue.
Before we conclude today's presentation, I want to make sure you're aware of the methods to stay informed on eClaims news and upcoming engagement opportunities. You can visit the eClaims website at wcb.ny.gov to stay up to date on eClaims news. You can also sign up to receive news straight to your inbox. This is how we will be communicating future engagement opportunities throughout the course of the BIS project. Visit the eClaims site and select WCB notifications within the eClaims overview section. Questions, comments, and feedback on the eClaims EDI 3.1 upgrade can be emailed to eClaims31@wcb.ny.gov. questions regarding existing eClaims EDI 3.0 should continue to be sent to eclaims@wcb.ny.gov. You can also follow the board on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. A recording of this webinar is going to be placed on our YouTube and eClaims website, as well as FAQ spawned from the questions being asked during this webinar series. So keep an eye out for these resources. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time today.